Hey guys, I'm coming to you today from Morro Rock Beach in Morro Bay, California, and it is absolutely beautiful here. And so I hope you enjoy the background. This week, I learned a lesson the hard way. I found myself in a national park in the dark, stranded. And when you're in a national park, I discovered that you're not a little far from help. You're really far from help. This is the third time I found myself in a similar situation, but this is the first time I was actually stranded. I think there's a lesson here. Let's talk about it.
Hey, Steffi K got something to say. Talk that listens, clears the way. Truth on the mic, grounded in change. You sticking with that? Oh yeah, we sticking with that. Laugh it out, talk it through, we ain't looking back.
Some chats ain't easy, but we take it slow. Tough stuff tackled now, watch us glow.
Sticking with it. Yeah, we sticking with that.
When I look back at different times as I've traveled around the country, there are two specific times that I recall where I almost got myself in a pickle. One was, you know how when you push the gas gauge and you get down to the empty sign, and then you always think, I just go on a wing and a prayer and hope that I get a couple miles. Well, one time I was on the wing in the prayer and I still had 12 miles to a gas station, and I did make it. I don't know how, but I did, and that I was very grateful for that. And then another time I had a car that let you know how many miles you had left, and it said 12. And I remember stopping at a freeway entrance. I can't recall what state I was in, but the lady said, you are 12 miles from a gas station. And I thought, oh, perfect. That should just about get me there. And it did. But this time was something new and exciting. I had stopped at a gas station prior to entering the national park and somehow forgot to get gas. And I went up to watch the sunset. And on my way down, I stayed a little bit too long, and it was getting very, very dark. And for some reason, I shockingly looked down, and it said I had 1 mile. And I knew I had 25 miles to get out of the forest itself. So I didn't panic. And my first instinct was to find a spot to pull over, because as you know, on those national park roads, they're very thin, and a lot of times you can fall off. And so I certainly didn't want to be sitting in the dark on the road. And so I did find a place to pull off. I shut the car off, and then the next thought was to call roadside service, except I didn't have that. My friend told me to get it many times, and I didn't do it. And so that is something that's happening. However, I don't know in that situation that would have helped me. I just don't know. I called 911, and they connected me to a tow truck that was in Hollister, California, which is about 45 minutes away. The lady said she could only bring me 2 gallons of gas. Their truck could only hold 2 gallons of gas. And if that wasn't enough to get me to a gas station, then they'd have to tow me after that. So I'm not sure exactly if she was going to follow me or what the situation was, but I didn't have a good feeling about any of it. So she suggested I called a regular roadside service where they offer things like, bringing gas to people that forget to gas up. And so I did that, but it took me 5 tries. The 5th try was when I got someone to actually call me back and offer to help. That was fantastic. So the person was on their way. They communicated with me throughout. In the end, the whole ordeal was about 2 hours. He showed up in I suppose it's a utility van. There are parts to the story that are very comical and very hilarious. And I think that they are definitely story worthy to share with you at this time. The guy that brought the gas, he was very, very nice, very wonderful, very sweet. I immediately got the image of Luigi from Mario and Luigi. So he had one of those coal miners lights on his forehead, which was dark, and he had put flashing lights on his utility vehicle because, of course, it was the middle of a thin road. And so he came over with the gas and he set it down, and he had no spout. So after I'd been waiting all this time, there was no spout for the gas tank. And so he went back to his vehicle and he got out, those Black & Decker drills, portable with the base, and then you would just, use your drill or screwdriver, the battery operated ones. So something that looked like that. He connected 2 long black hoses on either side. And the intention was to put one side of the hose in the gas tank and the other in my car. And so he initially started it and it wouldn't turn on. And I didn't panic, and it felt a little bit like it wasn't real. And then he did some kind of flippy thing, and then he did have sound and he had power. So he's using this little portable drill thing with hoses coming out both sides, trying to fill my gas tank from the 5-gallon tank on the ground, and it didn't work. And so all I could think of was, am I going to have to wait another 2 hours sitting here in the dark for him to go get a nozzle, funnel, or anything? And so I said, do you have anything else in that vehicle, that utility vehicle? So he mumbled something, and he went and he came out with this gigantic silver funnel, like about 10 times the size of a normal funnel, and it was silver. So then he had to lift the big 5-gallon tank, and I offered to help because, I work out. But he's like, no, I got it. It felt like 100 years for him to put the 5 gallons of gas in my car at that point. But it was all happening, and it was all great, and it was mission accomplished. And then shortly after, I was able to go on my way. So in the meantime, I think the biggest things were I didn't panic. I did have my friend Linda from Minnesota, who I was able to stay with on the phone most of the time. The big blessings were that I was able to pull over to a safe spot, that Linda was still awake and able to talk to me for most of that time, and also that I felt safe. Nobody pulled over. And then I started to think too, well, would I pull over if someone was stranded on the road? I probably would not, because I wouldn't know how to fix it. I could offer people a ride, I guess, but I wouldn't know how to fix things mechanically. I think the best part, again, was that I did not panic. I stayed calm and just trusted. They did send an officer out to me who offered to sit with me the whole time, Officer Alamo. And I said, is it Alamo like the Alamo? He goes, yeah, just like that. But I said, no, I'm good, totally perfect. And so he left. Quite a while later, the tow truck came, but it was all mission accomplished, and everyone was very, very nice. I think there are many lessons to this story, but one of the top ones being make sure you have enough gas before you enter a national park, especially one that you've never been in before and don't know your way around. I don't exactly know why Luigi didn't pull out the giant silver funnel in the first place, why he tried to use the portable drill contraption. I guess I'll never know. But that in itself makes the story very, very unique. The other huge positive is that I had cell service. Many of these national parks, I have no cell service for hours. So what if I had had no cell service? It would have been a little bit worse. Probably much worse, actually, because I couldn't have called the 5 other roadside systems. And you might be asking, gosh, just how much does it cost to be rescued on the middle of a national park? Well, let me tell you, that 5 gallons worth of gas cost $480 for time and travel. So that in itself was a hard lesson to learn. Another blessing is that I had already reserved the hotel. I thought the hotel was at the end of the park, but it was actually an hour and a half away from where I was. So after the delay, it was very dark by the time I got there. The hotel was gracious enough to give me some free water and snacks. So I was very thankful, because I did completely miss dinner. So I've definitely been reflecting on the different lessons I learned in this case. I think sometimes the lesson is in the delay, the mistake, the cost. It doesn't stop you. It just becomes part of your story. And just because you're delayed doesn't mean you're off course. I made it safely, and I'm still on my way. I hope today's Stickin' story gave you a laugh, some reflection, maybe some time that you've been stranded in your life. A reminder that our episodes air on Wednesday nights at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find us on all major social media platforms. For my Steffi K thought of the day, I have 2. My first one is, when you go to a big beach, and this is huge, why do people feel compelled to go right behind the camera? Because they wouldn't have to do any of that. I'm just asking for a friend on that. And number 2, as I get ready to leave this beautiful, beautiful state of California, I'm reminded of the saying, all good things must come to an end. But I don't actually think that's true. I think the right things, the real things, don't end. Maybe the real lesson is this: take the trip, eat the cake, do the thing that you've been putting off, because it's not about how perfectly it goes. It's about having the courage to do it at all. And sometimes the moments that don't go as planned, they end up being the moments that stay with us. They change us, they make us better. They're the very moments that remind us who we are. I'm Steffi K, and I am sticking with that. Have a great week.